Hi, I'm Simon Isaacs, and this is our Anything in Print podcast.
The profound impact of our industry, of print, of what it can do, of how it can engage, diversification, adaptability, as being key watchwords, I feel, for the year ahead. And it's also about, as you just said, fundamentally understanding who your customers are, what they're trying to achieve, and enabling them to achieve it. Our product is not ink on paper. It's not the actual physical iteration of our products and services. That's the carrier mechanism. That's the facilitation mechanism. Our product is achieving our customers' visual communication. There is now an opportunity, I think, for print to come in and fill that space more, and we're already seeing it. Growth of direct mail in the UK is going through the roof. The most healthy businesses in our membership are the ones that were either specializing in direct mail already or have made the tack into that. The major trend is that sustainability marketing is here to stay.
Hi, my name's Tim Carter, and I'd like to welcome you to the fourth episode of Series 2 of our podcast, which we're entitling What It Takes to Succeed in 2023, featuring IPIA's Brendan Perring. If you haven't caught up yet on the first three, I really encourage you to do so, as we've had some incredible guests speaking about the hottest verticals to be involved in at the moment, changing customer demands and business transformation, and improving customer experience in print. Today, as we approach the end of 2022, we'll talk about the major trends in the print industry, what's driving them, but more importantly, how to make a success in this ever-evolving industry. So I'm really pleased to welcome Brendan Perring on the show today, who is a general manager at the Independent Printing Industries Association, an organisation committed to serving and protecting the interests of print, as well as connecting our industry with the associated ones like creative and design industries. IPIA have been doing an amazing job supporting the industry, and at Ricoh, we're really proud to be a member too. IPIA are definitely champions of print. So Brendan, welcome to, and it's great to have you with me on the show today.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
So let's kick off. I'd like to ask you a series of questions, and that will hopefully provoke some conversation moving forward. So let's start with a summary of 2022. So what are the key trends you observe this year that are affecting printers, and what's driving them?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that we have seen is, and I was only speaking to our members earlier this week, is our industry can cope with a difficult market. What it can't cope with is an unstable market. And I think that instability is one of the key things that has been a major challenge for print businesses across the country, because volumes aren't predictable. The seasonality has really gone out the window a lot. And that's a consequence of COVID, changes to events, and all of our major sectors that feed into us. So I think that one of the real hopes going forward is that even if we face a difficult situation with paper prices increasing, the utilities costs being a major issue, that if we could just get to a position where there is a stably difficult market, our industry is incredibly inventive, very innovative, and they, print businesses can find a way around it. So that would be one of my hopes going forward, is that we can get some stability. I think one of the other key trends that I've noticed is that there's been a very significant consolidation in our key print buying markets, and this is a trend that is, I think, accelerated, I would say, over the last 5 years specifically. But I would like to call it a brain drain in key print buying sectors, where in major marketing organizations, brand management companies, even smaller marketing agencies, or even say a marketing manager inside a large company, independent company, in previous years, they would have had a working knowledge of print. They would have had a decent understanding of its mechanics. Maybe they still needed to use a specialist. but there's been a very, very large brain drain in these departments of people that know a lot about print. And I think that's a consequence of the digital bubble, which I think has also burst, where this complete digital first, digital only narrative, which reached its ascendancy, I suppose, about 5 years ago, saw lots of young people come through the sector over the last 10 years. Maybe they came in their early 20s, they're now in their early 30s. People who knew a lot about print and moved on to other sectors. But now inside those departments, there isn't a huge working knowledge of our industry. And whilst that may seem like a bad thing, I actually think that that's a significant opportunity. And we are seeing lots of print businesses, print management companies, specialist print marketing agencies really exploit that proactively by showcasing to those sort of gatekeepers the profound impact of our industry, of print, of what it can do, of how it can engage. I mean, just to give you one tangible example, we were at an event recently, and I was standing in the aisle handing out magazines and engaging with a lot of marketeers at a marketing-focused event. And I stopped one of them in the aisle with the magazine and said, so, what's your opinion of print? What are your views on it? And, stereotypically, yeah, well, print's, it's out, it's outmoded, it's dead, we don't use it, we're digital first, etc. And I said, okay, so do you think print could be an effective engagement tool? Well, not really, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I said, okay, why are you talking to me? Well, you handed me a magazine. And they stopped in their tracks and went, oh, I see your point there. It's like, yeah, exactly. So I've handed you a magazine, it's physical, and I can see you. I said, in the last 30 seconds we've been chatting, you've opened it, your hands have caressed the pages. I've even seen you sniffing the magazine because, the smell of solvent and everything is a little bit evocative. And we're having this whole engaged conversation because of print. Now, let me just take you around and show you the rest of our stand. And I got them to engage with paper, with web to print, with versioning, how to utilize data to target consumers. And it absolutely blew them away. They were astonished. And as part of that conversation, I said, look, what was the last return on your last big major national email campaign? Because they work for a jewelry manufacturer that does white label jewelry all around the country. And they said, oh, well, maybe 0.2% open rate. And I said, okay, well, what if there was a product that gave you a 99% open rate? Oh, that doesn't exist. I'm like, it does. It's called direct mail. It comes through the post. It's got your name on it. You have to open it because you don't know what's inside. And when you pull it out, which is the crucial stage, you've already got a 99% open rate. And that 1% is where you got the address wrong and your data is not good enough. Once they've opened it, that's where the real power comes in. You've got huge amounts of data on your customers. If it is then personalized to them with a name, if you even know, say, jewelry, I bet you can tell me what color your customers like because of the amount of time they dwell on a specific page with certain colors of jewelry. You can even personalize it to that extent where the color of the piece is personalized to the individual. And then the next thing was, oh, well, that must cost, hundreds of pounds per sheet. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Okay, it's a little bit more expensive because you're using data and versioning and maybe some specialty techniques, but it doesn't cost that much more. And the return investment for you is you now can go back to your boss and say, I've got a 99% engagement rate. Out of that 99% engagement rate, the follow through far exceeds that of digital. And it's all about return on investment. And ultimately your goal is to grow your market share and engage with consumers. And that's what's critical. So overall, it's so important that our industry, and I've seen this again as a major trend, where print businesses in our membership, when I interacted with them over the course of the year, are able to articulate that, to sell themselves, to educate, like we did that day at the event, there can be tremendous results, and we are seeing that happen. And part of that, I think, shows that there's a rapid growth of specialization for printers that can do this, that can do specialty print, that are getting out of the churn and burn market, trying to make pennies per sheet on business cards and flyers. And they're spending a lot more time engaging with their customers to actually understand what does your brand need? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to grow your company? And developing products and services that can really service that. Part of that, I think, is moving towards a consultative approach with customers. And web to print feeds into that. And I know this is something that Ricoh has very powerful solutions that you offer in this field, where a lot of print businesses will say, oh, well, web to print, it distances me from my customer because it takes out that personal connection on email or on phone, because they may ordering my stock, they're specifying ordering and paying for our stock products online. And my point back is, no, it doesn't actually. It makes it easier for them to procure from you stock items, standard items, which actually frees up your team and you to work less on running the business and doing all that huge amount of admin that's required, to actually then go out and meet with your customers, to engage with them, to spend more time talking to them. So if anything, web to print e-commerce empowers you as a print business to spend more time with your customers, not less. And we're seeing a huge growth in that across the membership. Those are embracing it. And I think the final major trend that we're seeing, which is now no longer, this is dipped in and out over the years, but the major trend is that sustainability marketing is here to stay. And I don't think it's just a greenwashing anymore and people just putting a nod to it. Of course, that's going to happen. But a lot of brands, major marketing companies, all the way down to your local estate agent chain, are now taking sustainability procurement very seriously. And they want to understand, even if they're buying a major print run, okay, what are your accreditations? Is this printed on, where is this paper sourced? How can it be recycled at end of life? What inks are you using? What's your, as a print business, what's your carbon footprint? And a lot of major contracts now have that. I mean, it is still quite Wild West. There isn't a very standardized approach, but the overall number of questions that our print businesses are getting asked in the membership around this is really significantly increased. And those businesses, just to name drop a couple, Claremont in our membership being one, Greens, the sign makers in digital print being another, have gone a step further and actually made green quoting a fundamental part of their business. So the customer gets a stock quote, and then they also get a green quote that uses substrates that are more environmentally friendly, that can be recycled at end of life, and how they can be recycled as part of that quote. So using a secondary company to recycle it, and saying to the company, look, if you're serious about your green credentials and proving to your customers that you're going the extra mile, here's an alternative route to produce the same job, but that has a much lower carbon footprint, much less waste to landfill. Yeah, and we're seeing that really take off.
Interesting. I just want to touch on a couple of points you made, because it absolutely resonates with me and what I'm hearing from the market and what our customers are saying as well. You mentioned the digital bubble bursting, and I would concur with that. And I think that there is an element of digital fatigue now that we're experiencing, which plays to the advantage of print as a different method of communication. Is that something that you've experienced? And if so, why do you think, what are the factors that have led individuals and consumers to now experience this digital fatigue and look for alternative methods?
I think that as society has changed and evolved so massively, literally over the last 20 years, we go back 20 years, faxes were still in operation. Lots of correspondence and stuff was done via the mail and print. The pace of life, dare I say it, was slower to some degree. The role of the professional, you and I, in our businesses, we were multitasking less, and technology came in and was meant to empower us to do more. But what it actually did was mean that we just became more busy, and you needed fewer people. Instead of keeping 5 people in a department, there's now 2. Because there's 2 people with technology, with mobile phones, with email and everything else, can kind of do the work of maybe 3.5 people. And there has been this massive push towards digital. But in our daily lives, we're absolutely bombarded, whether it's on social media or email or digital advertising. even when we're trying to relax at night to watch something on our phones or whatever on tablet, you're still getting bombarded by digital adverts. So this fatigue has set in where digital advertising, while still effective when used correctly, has significantly decreased because people are just switching off. And in fact, there's even a counterbalance to that where people are now aggressively annoyed. And I've had this so many times actually just in the last couple of weeks where I've been having, conversations where someone goes, I was literally just thinking about getting a washer dryer and paused maybe on a, did a quick Google and paused on a picture of one for 10 bloody seconds. And the next thing I know, I'm on a Facebook and all I've got is adverts for washer dryers.
Yeah.
That's incredible use of technology that pixels and everything else can do that to throw you those ads, but it actually really annoys people. So print, which is tactile, still has a massively much higher trust factor rating than digital. It gives people the chance to interact not just visually, but with their other senses as well. It's a longer form, so you can take time to, whether it's a catalog or a letter or whatever, it's a more personal human touch. That fatigue means there is now an opportunity, I think, for print to come in and fill that space more. And we're already seeing it. Growth of direct mail in the UK is going through the roof. The most healthy businesses in our membership are the ones that were either specializing in direct mail already or have made the tack into that. And even then, we're seeing lots of our members have major brand customers come back to them and go, oh, yeah, that catalog we stopped doing with you 5 years ago, we'd like to bring it back online now, because we just aren't getting any cut through whatsoever with digital advertising. Yeah,
no, absolutely. We hear exactly the same things, and it's interesting to hear you make those points that the amount of information that we consume today, there is only a certain amount that is going to be compelling to you because of the volumes that you're consuming over the course of the day. And as you say now, with AI in place, there's very subtle ways in which products and systems and companies can position themselves in front of you, but it can be quite invasive as well. But you may not choose to want to do that subconsciously, as you say. You may have thought about a washing machine or whatever, but then to be constantly bombarded with those products, I think, people are getting tired of that now and that approach. And I would absolutely agree. So against that background, how do you think that organizations within our industry should adopt a different approach to be able to capture the imagination of those organizations or those individuals that are experiencing this digital fatigue?
So I'll give you a good example. One of our members, EasyPrint, did a campaign whereby they wanted to prove, and this was to major marketing companies or marketing professionals, senior marketing professionals that had previously bought print from them but had gone cold. So they'd either stopped altogether or they'd significantly reduced their volume, or what they were doing is just ordering stock, bland, standard stuff to put in a box or whatever, and it wasn't imaginative or particularly engaging. So what they did was create a 4-tier campaign in which they mixed digital, video, print, and sensory print all together, and packaging techniques into one campaign. And the objective of it was to prove the power of print to engage the target consumer. So the first thing they did was send an email out to these group of people to say, hey, look, something's going to come through the post. Please look out for it. Now, they didn't really care whether they saw that email or not, but it was to prove a point later on in the campaign. So they sent the email out to this group, and watch out. Next thing was that because they had their data, is that what came through the post, and I was a recipient, like a beta recipient of this as well, so I could see the campaign in fold, was the next thing that came through the post in a beautiful envelope that had my name on it as well. Opened it up, pulled it out, and there was a personalized personalized coaster for a drink. And as you pulled it out, the scent of raspberries like smacked me in the face. Really evocative, nice smell of raspberries. There was a soft touch purple laminate. There was my name was picked out in spot UV for the personalization. There was gold foiling. So immediately you've got multiple things going on in your brain. It's personalized to you, which makes it feel relevant. The sensory smell makes an experience now of what's going on. It's not just a passive thing. I'm actually experiencing something. The tactile, I mean, I'm running my hands over it and I'm intrigued now, right? I've been sent this coaster and there's just a message in it that says, just wait. Next week, something else will be coming through the post. So I'm now wondering all week what's happening. It's kind of in the back of my mind. The next thing that comes through the post is a really big box. And I open it up and pull it out. And again, there's a similar style, so raspberry scents, but there's this beautiful package. And I open up the package, and again, it's got spot UV, it's personalized to me. There's extra additional gold foiling, specialty techniques. And as I open it up, I see that there's a nice bottle of raspberry gin, and tonic, and a bag of crisps, and a few other bits and pieces. And on the left-hand cover, as I open it up, it triggers a video on the left-hand side of it, which is just Janice Brito, who's the MD there, telling me about the campaign, what their objective is, and could they just have a 10-minute meeting to discuss the impact of this campaign and how they could deliver this for their clients, for this marketing agency's clients. So what they then did after that part of the campaign was they managed to secure 70% of the people they sent the box out to, gave them a meeting. And what they did was fed them back instantly to say, out of those 70% who had the meeting, I think less than 10 had opened the first email. But all of them opened up the box. All of them opened up the coaster. All of them engaged and dealt with this. Now, this is a very extreme example, but they got those meetings, and out of those meetings, they got, 90% booked a campaign with EasyPrint and then turned into regular volume customers. And the volume they were getting was new volume, didn't exist before, because they came up with inventive ways that they could engage with their customers. They'd proven the point, also that it isn't print versus digital, it's print and digital. And they created new volume out of that. So that's a really clear example of how, and EasyPrint had never done this before. They'd never done it before, but they realized we've got the data, we got the know-how, we got the expertise, we can deliver this to wow our customers and really make an impact, and it worked. And I see that. I've had another company I know well, Deck Tech, in South Wales. They do this regularly, literally once a month, in different ways to inspire and engage by using print. So there we go.
Great examples, and it really brings it to life. I think to achieve a 70% response rate is unheard of with a digital program, digital only program. So to be able to achieve something at that level is unprecedented. But one of the points you make there, I just want to respond to, because I don't think it's a digital or print exclusive type approach. The two mechanisms, the two different types of scenarios can quite and do now very happily harmonize with each other to achieve much more of a positive outcome. And I would absolutely agree. And you've given two really good examples there. But where you can combine those programs together in a more innovative way, I think the outcomes and the returns, as I've seen from people who've spoken to me, are much healthier as well. So no, some really good examples there. A couple of other things I just wanted to pick up on from your initial response, and one that's really, really dear to my heart is something that I'm very passionate about within my role at Ricoh. And you mentioned we no longer should be customers and suppliers. It's more of a consultative approach that wins the day at the end, that wins the hearts and minds and creates that longevity in relationship. And I absolutely agree with that, because, and it's something that we are striving to do better and more of at Ricoh, in that we need to win the hearts and minds of our customers and our prospects by asking the right questions, being a trusted advisor to those organizations before we can start to talk about anywhere the synergies may be in terms of technology or systems requirements. So I absolutely concur with what you've said. Have you got any other examples where you've spoken with clients, or you've heard of scenarios where that true consultative approach has led to a much more positive business outcome than the traditional supplier relationship type scenario?
Yeah, definitely. Another example would be someone like Clark Print. And similarly, we talked about diversification, adaptability as being key watchwords, I feel, for the year ahead. And it's also about, as you just said, fundamentally understanding who your customers are, what they're trying to achieve, and enabling them to achieve it. Our product is not ink on paper. It's not the actual physical iteration of our products and services. That's the carrier mechanism. That's the facilitation mechanism. Our product is achieving our customers' visual communication, their goals through visual communication. And Clark Print really have clocked this. And again, 10 years ago, they were a standard, straightforward litho jobbing churn and burn printer. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. If you can make money at that, that's great. The difficulty for our market is that many people can't, because of the trade printers, the size of trade print that's grown up, the fact that smaller SME printers are using those really big trade printers means that that middle ground of formerly litho printers that made money out of big volume are struggling because the market has evolved and because the overall print volumes have come down. So what Clark Print did was they identified some niches where they had some real strengths: design, specialization, bespoke work, really high finish. So what they did was they realized that because of their place where they are in Birmingham, they were already servicing about 10 clients who were specialists in the arts market and required, and also schools and higher education establishments. And specifically in the art market, they realized that there was an opportunity to do more than just get the specification through from the designer and fulfill it, because they realized that they didn't really understand the capabilities of what they could do. So they organize open days a few times a year where they put on a really nice experience, tour of the factory, and they bring in artists, designers from all around Birmingham to actually see how print is produced. And they use the design, the content they've already got from those companies to develop really high-end, different special effects, different ways that they could use their brands, their graphics and everything else for much higher impact. They engage with them, they consult with them, they build friendships with them as a customer, and then they say, right, here's some really evocative, interesting ways we could do these campaigns differently to make you stand out as an organization so you can better engage with your customers, your consumers. And they've seen great success from that. And again, what they're doing is creating new print volumes that didn't exist, because the designer or the marketeer at the art agency would just go, right, we need to get 5,000 coffee table books done of the new catalog. No particular special effects, no particularly anything different. It's just a physical iteration so they can hand people when they come to shows. That was it. Now what they're doing is producing maybe 10 lots of different versions of their catalogs for their art. They're making them specific to those specific openings, and they are beautiful pieces of art in and of themselves, because they now understand how whether it's personalized to the recipient, or they've done a huge amount with spot raised UV or gold or metallic effects or specialty paper. The list is endless. And that's another great example of where a print business just lifted its head up when we can't just stay in the churn and burn forever because we're seeing it shrink. What are our assets? What are our creative technical capabilities? And how can we inspire our customers to create new business that didn't exist before?
Again, a great example. Great example. So let's just move the conversation along. You'd spoken about the pressures that our industry and our sector has experienced historically and more recently, with the significant increase in pricing of raw material and obviously power. One of the topics that we jointly discussed and promoted at an event that we were both involved in at the Ricoh facility in Telford, was doing more with less. So can you just expand a bit on what your thought is around how organisations can do more with less as they move forward and create strategies for the future?
Yeah, sure. And I think a lot of, if we've got SME print business owners, managers who are listening to this, they may think that this segment isn't for them. Oh yeah, automation, leveraging technology. Oh, that's for either someone who's super specialist or an agency or a much bigger business. But I really honestly don't feel that's the case. And we are seeing so many more of our smaller print business members leveraging technology to grow their business. And it comes down to a few fundamental things: is starting small, looking at one part in your business that you know is inefficient, and leveraging the technology and the automation that is out there to make that part of your business more efficient. And it is possible. So one of our members earlier in the year explained to me that they'd started this process, and they'd simply seen one scenario where, in order for to move from print to finishing, a docket needed to be produced, and because the two systems didn't speak to each other in an automated way, and they felt it was safer to have a print docket versus bits of digital information flying around and people trying to keep track of emails and whatever. They were still printing off the docket and walking that in the 5 minutes over to the other end of the factory to tell finishing what to do with the job. And then obviously on the way, they're stopping and chatting to people and so forth. And that was a huge loss in productivity for a worker who was simply just walking up and down because they hadn't created a digital link between the two. And they, wrongly perceived that would be difficult. They happened to have a meeting penciled in with an MIS provider who came down, looked at the factory, looked at these things, and just started small and went, right, you see that one thing there? You're losing hours of productivity per week just on that one thing alone. Why don't we can very easily create an API system that just connects print and finishing. It's that simple. They don't even need to read emails. They can just access this job bag, comes up, the instructions are in there, and they're no longer walking something physical over. That saved them a huge amount of productivity, and it started a barrel roll effect where they realized they could start to apply that to all sorts of different processes all over the place. And it came back to what we spoke about earlier. They then were initially scared of moving on to e-commerce because they thought it'd be really difficult and ordering online and so forth. And then they actually started having a conversation with a large trade printer that does their long run litho work. And they went, you don't need to even do that. You can just use our online ordering portal and we just skin it for you. And your customers can order this standard work from you. You take the cut. There's the extra bits and pieces you can bolt in for your own company. So they started doing that. And slowly but surely, they're not there yet, but the overall productivity, the efficiency, the automation of the business is freeing up skilled people who are trained, people who've got 30 years on the job, from walking bits of paper from one end of the factory to the other to actually applying themselves to do something productive that benefits the business. And whilst previously our industry had enough fat on the bone and competitive stakes weren't as high as they are now, you could maybe get away with that. I think, unfortunately, the case is now you can't. As time goes forward, unless you've got a particularly strong niche in a geographic market where no one else is doing what you do, and you've got the lion's share of that business because it's a specific thing, like printing onto some really sensitive media and no one else wants to even bother, you've perfected the way of doing it. Great. You don't need to worry about automation or any of the rest of it because you've got a captured market. But for everyone else, you have to really focus on these areas of how can I just improve all of these different areas of my business. Yeah,
I agree. And I think sometimes the strive for efficiency is not as daunting as might be thought in the first instance. You gave an example of just more effectively joining two systems up, which is a relatively straightforward and low-cost task to undertake. And I agree, I've come across and seen many other instances where the adoption of technology or systems or solutions at relatively low cost has created a massive gain in terms of efficiencies and improvements. And there's been examples where we've seen organisations who've had to go through the inevitable downsizing through the pandemic, and have seen those volumes build, but have not necessarily increased their staff back to pre-pandemic levels. They've looked at ways in which they can automate processes and become more efficient with the people and the resources they've got. And we've got great examples of where that's happened. So it is absolutely possible. It's being done. And I think the examples you've given, are highly relevant. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's great food for thought moving forward.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it starts with the SME print businesses I've seen that have made these moves. They haven't done it by themselves, and they haven't done it all in one go. So even if right now you're listening to this and you feel fearful or whatever, because I think fear is a big thing, fear of the unknown, or, oh, I'm not technologically savvy. Well, you might not be, but I can promise you someone in your business will. Empower them. And two, your suppliers are. So a lot of print businesses don't realize, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on a Ricoh podcast, they can, if they've got a Ricoh machine in the corner, they go, oh yeah, they buy the ink from you or they buy the toner from you, you come out and service the machine. They never think of asking you for advice, but you can offer that advice. You can literally, they can sit down with you, call you up and say, hey, you're my machinery supplier. I want to move into this area. I want to understand how to get into e-commerce. How do I put an MIS system in my business? And you can connect them with a business coach and people who can help them actually do that and give them the expertise you already have. I mean, is that right?
Absolutely. Well, we're in a very enviable position. We have our own MIS solution as well. So our product portfolio extends. It's a very, very extensive set of systems and processes now. But absolutely, and we welcome that opportunity now. And I'm strongly encouraging my people to adopt that approach, and moving back to the conversation we had about becoming that trusted advisor and being truly consultative and being naturally inquisitive as well is a behaviour that I think has to be, it needs to become the norm moving forward. So absolutely, and I agree with you. I think anybody listening to this, reach out to your suppliers or your partners, because there is, there's intellectual property there that you can tap into that ultimately you benefit from. So absolutely, I think it's great advice. Again, moving on to another topic that is very dear to my heart, very close to my heart, and I was really encouraged by the session that we attended last week, the IPIA event last week, in looking at the profile of individuals who attended that meeting, because one of my passions is how can we create a scenario that enables younger people and younger talent to naturally want to be inquisitive about our industry and our sector and ultimately participate and benefit from it. I've been fortunate to benefit, from our sector for many, many years now. But I'd like to, at some stage when I do hang my boots up, and it's not for a little while yet, but when I do, I'd like to feel some comfort in the, there is a new generation, there's a new breed of individual that is safe hands for our industry to take it to the next level. So what are your thoughts around that, Brendan?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of initiatives going on with us, with other trade associations, with suppliers to the market about trying to stimulate, encourage young people into the industry, and to inspire people at school level and so forth. But I think what we should also really need to focus on, and which is why on our awards, the one you're mentioning, is that we have a Young Leader Award. The printing charity do this with their Rising Star Awards, is looking to the young people that are in our industry already and keeping them, trying not to lose them, because it's one thing to attract new talent. We need to keep hold of the talent we've already got. And also fundamentally seeing where maybe they don't have the overall experience to run a business or a whole department or whatever, but especially the younger generation, have incredible digital native skills that they can bring to that business. And over the course of the last year, so many stories when I've been sitting with MDs of print businesses where they go, yeah, we sort of, we're talking to, Adam, and we found out that like he understands this thing called HTML programming, and he can write basic software systems. And we were really struggling to figure out how we could connect these two bits of our business, and found out Adam could do that. So he's actually now the liaison with our MIS provider, to be the person, because he actually can speak their language. And suddenly, whilst he's still got a role over here, which is his day job, he's now been empowered with those extra skill set over here, and is getting paid extra for it to be the liaison between the print business and the MIS provider, because he can speak the language. That's just one example. There are other examples where the fundamental understanding of social media marketing out there, as we spoke about earlier, that consultative approach has seen them get involved, younger people who wouldn't have thought get involved on a sort of strategic level with customer meetings, because they can provide another skill set that can bring into the meeting that no one else there has. So I would really strongly suggest to everyone listening to this, do a full evaluation of your team. Find out what other skills they have. And if you find that they have a skill, find a way to use that skill, to empower it, to make it part of your business. And that doesn't have to change that person's day role, because no, they don't have the experience. Maybe they've only been with you 6 months or a year, but you can harness that specific skill and really, really move it forward. I'm an example of that. So when I started at Link Publishing, which owns Print Monthly and Silent magazines, the MD and the directors found out after I'd gone to my first trade show about 6 weeks in that I was pretty good at filming and video editing. And in every other organization I worked for, every other publishing organization, that's where it stopped. There was never any desire to move that forward. Immediately when I got back and I showed them the footage and the video I created from this event, they were like, wow, we need to create a business out of this. So we actually, they gave me budget. We developed a small business out of it. And it turned into an entire digital media studio within 2 years, because they just saw, well, this young person who's working for us has the skills and talent. We must be able to find a way to use this. And they did very effectively. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Good. Okay. So I just want to sort of gently wrap this up. It's been an intriguing conversation, and there's been, you shared some really good content. But if we sort of look into 2023, how would you summarize, what should we be looking for? Do you have any sort of final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the headlines, and then I'd like to just share a quick story with you, which I think encapsulates that. Is just remember, as we spoke earlier, ink on paper is not the product we're selling. It's what that achieves. Your product is not the delivery method. Remember that. Your product, your expertise, the technical know-how, the creativity you have, the ability to produce incredible things as a print manufacturing business. You can talk to your client and find better ways of achieving their end goals. So just remember that ink on paper isn't the product. Being able to say yes to diverse work is absolutely critical, and collaborating with other print businesses is fundamental. We see that more and more and more, where no, you don't need to say yes for yes sake just to win a job, especially if it's not going to be profitable. But being able to say yes to a customer that comes to you with something bespoke or weird that maybe you wouldn't do yourself so readily. But if you've built up a network of trade providers and other printers in the area, collaborate with them, find out what other printers in the area can do, find out what their specialisms are, so that the next time the customer comes to you and asks for something, you can say, yes, I can do that. And yes, you might be subbing it out to your friend, your trade printer or whatever, who brings it back. You're making a margin. Most importantly, what you've just done is hold on to the customer, and you can develop them for more work. Generate new work from your existing customers, absolutely fundamental. We've discussed that throughout the call and ways that you can do that. Find new ways to inspire them and create that new print volume. Don't just quote for the volume that already exists. And your relationships and personal interactions with customers are key. print businesses, that is your strength, is that personal relationship you've got with the customer, that connection you've got with the customer, exploit it. And then to kind of wrap that up, one of the biggest triumphs that I saw, one of the happiest stories I saw over COVID was one of our members who is a cartographic map printer down in the South Coast. That's what they've done for 50 years, specialized in map printing on specialty media and substrates. COVID ended that business almost overnight. But they had that know-how. Now they needed a bit of luck. They had a phone call. Someone called them up and said, "Hey, can you print onto heat-sensitive media? I saw that, mentioned and on your website." Yeah, we can do that. How about sewing paper? Now, traditionally, this is a family-owned business. They've just gone, nah, we're a map printer. Why would we do that? But because of the circumstance, they said, yes, send in your proofs. We'll have a go. We've got spare time. So they had a go. They did a bit of tweaking to the machinery, and they proved that they could print really effectively in 4-color, high def on this sewing paper. And also they thought, yeah, well, while we're at it, we'll just create a little nice package for this stuff to go in. Not thinking much of it. It's just, they packaged it beautifully, and they put the client's logo on the package and sent it back. Astonished the client. They went, this is absolutely amazing. So what if I told you I'm on something called Instagram? I'm a massive influencer in the sewing world. I've got 20 million followers worldwide. And I've got a big brand where I sell products to sewing shops all around the world. And what I'd really like to do is for them to be able to directly order from you these packs, and we can, have it download and whatever. So they said, okay, that's amazing. Let's go for it. Next call was to an MIS provider and a web to print provider, got them on board, found out how that could be done, where people from all around the world could order these stock designs, order templates, personalize them, upload some artwork to personalize the brand to their package that they would get. That tick off, and now they're earning like 20 grand a month on that product alone. And it sparked a whole load of other products. They're not a cartographic map printer anymore. They're a web to print e-commerce global provider of this specialty print. And it just proves the point. They had to get lucky to get into that situation. But print businesses don't have to get lucky. You can just ask the question and make that connection yourself.
Yeah, a great story and a great way to summarize. And I think, from my side as well, I think as an industry, we've demonstrated so much resilience and will continue to do so. I think as a manufacturing industry, and I know that I absolutely agree that our focus shouldn't be the end product. It's about the business opportunities that are created by the end product, or the solutions that now are produced. But over the years, over the decades, our industry, our sector has demonstrated more resilience than any other manufacturing sector. And this is a great opportunity and a great time to demonstrate not just resilience, but optimism as well about what the future holds. And I think you've shared with us, Brendan, some great examples of how customers have changed, they've modified their approach, they've taken a different behaviour, they've adopted a different behaviour to be able to do things differently, which has resulted in a different type of outcome and a positive outcome. And I think that really is, where we'll see the industry moving to and evolving in the future. Print will continue to repurpose itself. It is, as you explained, it stimulates the senses like no other medium, and that will never change. So with all of the competition with other digital alternatives, print will still remain a very critical part of the marketing mix as we move forward. And I think the examples and the insight that you provided during our show today has really helped to demonstrate and bring the whole thing to life. So for that, I really thank you. I thank you for a great conversation. I thank you for the insight. And I thank you for supporting our industry through the IPIA, which, as I've said to you personally, I think is a breath of fresh air in terms of the initiatives, the culture that is now evolving and developing as a result of engaging with IPIA. And that feel-good factor is coming back. The positive conversations that your members have with each other needs to now be the benchmark, for not how we're going to survive, let's change that word, how we're going to thrive in 2023, how we're going to move forward and really, start to look at these new and exciting opportunities that I'm sure will all emerge. So thank you again, Brendan. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. And with that, I'm going to close today's podcast. And I think the only thing I can do, and jointly with myself and Brendan is wish you all a very prosperous and successful 2023. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tim. Great to be here.
Ricoh.